Welcome to Echoes of the Past, a Tidbit Takeaways podcast, where we explore the diverse tapestry of history to uncover the stories and events that have shaped the world we live in today. In this episode, we embark on a journey through the depths of time to explore the history of America, from its ancient origins to the modern era. Join us as we unravel the threads of the past and discover the echoes that still resonate in the present. Before the arrival of European explorers, the Americas were home to diverse indigenous cultures, each with its own languages, traditions, and societal structures. These societies thrived for thousands of years, developing sophisticated agricultural practices, monumental architecture, and rich artistic traditions. The indigenous peoples of North America, such as the Navajo, Sioux, Iroquois, and Cherokee, lived in harmony with nature, developing complex systems of governance, trade, and spirituality. They built vast cities, such as Cahokia in present-day Illinois, which was one of the largest urban centers in the world at the time. In South America, civilizations like the Inca, Maya, and Aztec built impressive cities, developed advanced agricultural techniques, and created intricate works of art and literature. These indigenous cultures had deep spiritual beliefs and practiced a variety of religions, often centered around nature and the land. They developed complex social structures, with tribes and clans forming alliances and trading networks. Art and culture flourished, with pottery, textiles, and sculpture being highly developed forms of artistic expression. The arrival of European explorers in the late 15th and early 16th centuries would forever change the landscape of the Americas, leading to centuries of colonization, conflict, and cultural exchange. However, the rich and diverse cultures of indigenous peoples continue to thrive to this day, contributing to the cultural tapestry of the Americas. In the 15th and 16th centuries, European explorers, sponsored by various monarchs and trading companies, began to venture across the Atlantic Ocean in search of new trade routes to Asia and Africa. Among the most famous explorers were Christopher Columbus, who mistakenly landed in the Americas in 1492 while searching for a westward route to Asia, and Ferdinand Magellan, whose expedition became the first to circumnavigate the globe. These explorations led to the gradual colonization of the Americas by European powers, primarily Spain, Portugal, France, and England. Spanish conquistadors, such as Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro, conquered vast empires in the Americas, including the Aztec and Inca civilizations, bringing them under Spanish rule. The French established colonies in Canada and along the Mississippi River, while the Dutch settled in New Netherland, which later became New York. The English established their first permanent colony at Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607, followed by the Pilgrims, who founded Plymouth Colony in 1620. Colonization brought significant changes to the Americas, including the introduction of European diseases that decimated indigenous populations, the imposition of European laws and governance structures, and the introduction of Christianity. Colonists established plantations for cash crops such as tobacco, cotton, and sugar, using enslaved Africans to provide labor. Despite these challenges, indigenous peoples continued to resist colonization through various means, including armed resistance, cultural preservation, and diplomatic negotiations. The history of colonization and its impacts on indigenous peoples continue to be important topics of study and debate in the Americas today. By the 17th century, the American colonies had become established outposts of European power, each with its own unique character and economy. The colonies were divided into three main regions: New England, the Middle Colonies, and the Southern Colonies. In New England, settlers established small, self-sufficient communities based on agriculture, fishing, and trade. The Puritans, seeking religious freedom, founded colonies such as Massachusetts Bay and Plymouth, where they established strict religious and social codes. The Middle Colonies, including New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, were more diverse and cosmopolitan, with a mix of European settlers, including Dutch, English, Swedish, and German immigrants. These colonies developed economies based on agriculture, trade, and industry, with cities like Philadelphia becoming major centers of commerce. The Southern colonies, including Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, were characterized by large plantations that grew cash crops such as tobacco, rice, and indigo. These plantations relied heavily on enslaved African labor, leading to the growth of a rigid social hierarchy based on race. Throughout the colonial period, the American colonies developed their own unique identities and forms of self-government. The colonies established colonial assemblies and town meetings, which laid the groundwork for representative government in the United States. The colonies also experienced conflicts with indigenous peoples and European powers, particularly France and Spain. The French and Indian War, fought between 1754 and 1763, resulted in Britain gaining control of Canada and much of the territory east of the Mississippi River. By the mid-18th century, tensions between the American colonies and Great Britain began to rise over issues such as taxation without representation and restrictions on colonial trade. These tensions would eventually lead to the American Revolution and the birth of the United States as an independent nation. The American Revolution, which began in 1775 and lasted until 1783, was a pivotal moment in the history of the United States. It was a conflict between Great Britain and its 13 American colonies, which sought independence and self-governance. The revolution was sparked by a series of events, including the Stamp Act of 1765, which imposed taxes on paper goods in the colonies without their consent, and the Boston Tea Party of 1773, where colonists protested British taxation by dumping tea into Boston Harbor. In April 1775, fighting broke out between colonial militia and British troops at Lexington and Concord, marking the beginning of the armed conflict. The following year, the colonies declared their independence from Great Britain with the adoption of the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776, drafted by Thomas Jefferson. The war was fought on multiple fronts, with major battles such as the Battle of Bunker Hill, the Battle of Saratoga, and the Siege of Yorktown. The war was costly and brutal, with many lives lost on both sides. In 1781, with the help of French military support, particularly naval forces under the command of the Comte de Rochambeau, the Americans achieved a decisive victory at the Siege of Yorktown, leading to the surrender of British forces under General Cornwallis. The Treaty of Paris, signed in 1783, officially ended the war and recognized the independence of the United States. The revolution laid the foundation for a new nation based on principles of liberty, democracy, and self-determination, and established the United States as a key player on the world stage. After gaining independence, the United States faced the challenge of establishing a new government and forging a national identity. The Articles of Confederation, adopted in 1781, established a weak central government with limited powers, leading to economic and political instability. In 1787, delegates from the states met in Philadelphia to draft a new constitution, which created a stronger federal government with separate executive, legislative, and judicial branches. The Constitution was ratified in 1788 and remains the supreme law of the land. The first presidential election was held in 1789, and George Washington was elected as the first president of the United States. Washington's presidency set many precedents, including the establishment of a cabinet and the practice of serving only 2 terms in office. During Washington's presidency, the new government faced numerous challenges, including the Whiskey Rebellion, an armed uprising in western Pennsylvania in response to attacks on whiskey. Washington's response to the rebellion demonstrated the federal government's ability to enforce its laws and maintain order. In 1791, the Bill of Rights was added to the Constitution, guaranteeing fundamental rights such as freedom of speech, religion, and the press. These amendments were crucial in securing the support of the states for the new Constitution. The early years of the Republic were also marked by the emergence of political parties. The Federalist Party, led by Alexander Hamilton, favored a strong central government and a loose interpretation of the Constitution. The Democratic Republican Party, led by Thomas Jefferson, advocated for states' rights and a strict interpretation of the Constitution. The presidency of John Adams, who succeeded Washington in 1797, was marked by tensions with France, culminating in the Quasi-War. an undeclared naval war fought between the United States and France from 1798 to 1800. The election of 1800, often referred to as the Revolution of 1800, saw Thomas Jefferson defeat Adams and usher in a new era of democratic Republican rule. Jefferson's presidency was marked by the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which doubled the size of the United States and opened up new opportunities for westward expansion. The early 19th century was a period of significant expansion for the United States as the nation pushed its boundaries westward. This era of westward expansion was driven by a variety of factors, including population growth, economic opportunities, and a sense of manifest destiny, the belief that it was the nation's destiny to expand across the continent. One of the most significant events of this period was the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, in which the United States acquired the vast territory of Louisiana from France for $15 million. This purchase doubled the size of the United States and paved the way for further westward expansion. The Lewis and Clark Expedition, led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark from 1804 to 1806, explored the newly acquired Louisiana territory and beyond, mapping the land, studying the flora and fauna, and establishing relationships with Native American tribes. In the early 1800s, settlers began to move westward in large numbers, seeking land, economic opportunities, and a fresh start. The Oregon Trail, Santa Fe Trail, and California Trail became major routes for westward migration, with thousands of settlers making the journey in search of a better life. As settlers moved west, conflicts with Native American tribes increased. The Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed into law by President Andrew Jackson, authorized the removal of Native American tribes from their ancestral lands in the southeastern United States to lands west of the Mississippi River. This policy led to the forced relocation of thousands of Native Americans, most notably the Cherokee on the Trail of Tears. Westward expansion also led to tensions over the issue of slavery. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 sought to maintain a balance between free and slave states by admitting Missouri as a slave state and Maine as a free state. It also established a line at 36°30 north latitude, north of which slavery would be prohibited in the Louisiana Territory. By the mid-19th century, the United States had expanded its borders to the Pacific Ocean, annexing Texas, Oregon, and California, and acquiring territory through treaties, purchases, and conquests. This period of westward expansion transformed the United States into a continental nation and laid the foundation for its future growth and development. The mid-19th century saw the United States torn apart by the Civil War, a conflict that would have a profound impact on the nation's history and identity. The war, fought from 1861 to 1865, was primarily a result of deep-rooted issues, including slavery, states' rights, and economic differences between the North and South. The election of Abraham Lincoln as president in 1860, on a platform opposing the expansion of slavery into new territories, prompted several Southern states to secede from the Union and form the Confederate States of America. The Confederate attack on Fort Sumter in April 1861 marked the beginning of the war. The Civil War was marked by brutal battles, including Gettysburg, Antietam, and Shiloh, and a staggering loss of life. The war also saw the introduction of new technologies and tactics, such as rifled muskets, ironclad warships, and trench warfare. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that all slaves in Confederate-held territory were to be set free. This marked a major turning point in the war and redefined its purpose as not only preserving the Union but also ending slavery. The war ended in 1865 with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee to Union General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse. The Civil War was the deadliest conflict in American history, with an estimated 620,000 soldiers killed and many more wounded. The period following the Civil War, known as Reconstruction, was a time of great upheaval and change in the United States. The Reconstruction era aimed to rebuild the South and integrate newly freed African Americans into society. During Reconstruction, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments were ratified, abolishing slavery, granting citizenship and equal protection under the law to all citizens, and granting voting rights to African American men. These amendments sought to ensure the civil rights of African Americans and protect them from discrimination. Despite these advances, Reconstruction was also marked by violence, political turmoil, and the rise of white supremacist groups such as the Ku Klux Klan. Reconstruction came to an end in 1877. With the Compromise of 1877, which resulted in the withdrawal of federal troops from the South and the end of Reconstruction policies. The Civil War and Reconstruction era left a lasting impact on the United States, shaping the nation's identity, politics, and society. The struggle for civil rights and equality that began during this period continues to resonate in American society today. Following the Civil War, the United States faced the daunting task of rebuilding the nation and integrating millions of newly freed African Americans into society. This period, known as Reconstruction, was marked by efforts to rebuild the South, establish new political and social systems, and address the legacy of slavery. Reconstruction began in 1865 under President Andrew Johnson, who favored a lenient approach towards the former Confederate states. However, Johnson's policies were met with resistance from Congress, which sought to protect the rights of newly freed African Americans and ensure their full inclusion in the political process. The Reconstruction Acts of 1867 divided the South into military districts and required the former Confederate states to ratify the 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship and equal protection under the law to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. The 15th Amendment, ratified in 1870, prohibited the denial of the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Despite these advances, Reconstruction was ultimately a failure in many respects. The period was marred by political corruption, economic instability, and racial violence. The rise of the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist groups targeted African Americans and their allies, leading to widespread fear and intimidation. By the late 1870s, Reconstruction came to an end as Southern states regained control of their governments and implemented Jim Crow laws, which enforced racial segregation and discrimination. African Americans were effectively disenfranchised and relegated to second-class citizenship. While Reconstruction was a period of disappointment for African Americans, it also laid the groundwork for future civil rights movements. African Americans and their allies continued to fight for equality and justice, leading to the eventual dismantling of Jim Crow laws and the expansion of civil rights in the 20th century. At the same time, the United States experienced rapid industrialization and economic growth. The period from the late 19th century to the early 20th century, known as the Gilded Age, was marked by a booming economy, technological innovation, and the rise of big business. Industrialists like Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan amassed vast fortunes through industries such as steel, oil, and finance. Their business practices, including the use of monopolies and trusts, sparked debates over the role of government in regulating the economy. The Gilded Age also saw the rise of labor unions and the emergence of a working-class movement. Workers fought for better wages, working conditions, and rights, leading to significant labor unrest and strikes, such as the Pullman Strike of 1894. Despite these challenges, the United States emerged from the Gilded Age as a global economic powerhouse, setting the stage for its emergence as a world leader in the 20th century. The Progressive Era, spanning roughly from the 1890s to the 1920s, was a period of social, political, and economic reform in the United States. Progressives sought to address the social problems caused by industrialization, urbanization, and immigration, and to promote greater democracy and social justice. Progressives advocated for a range of reforms, including workplace safety regulations, labor rights, women's suffrage, and the regulation of monopolies and trusts. Leaders of the progressive movement, such as Theodore Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and Jane Addams, worked to enact these reforms at the local, state, and federal levels. One of the most significant achievements of the Progressive Era was the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920, which granted women the right to vote. The suffrage movement, led by activists like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, had been decades in the making and marked a major victory for women's rights. The Progressive Era also saw the passage of other important reforms, including the Pure Food and Drug Act, which regulated the food and drug industries, and the creation of the Federal Reserve System, which established a central banking system in the United States. The Progressive Era came to an end with the outbreak of World War I in 1914. The war, which began in Europe and spread to other parts of the world, had a profound impact on the United States, both domestically and internationally. Initially, the United States remained neutral in the conflict, but as the war dragged on and German aggression increased, public opinion shifted towards intervention. In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany, citing the need to make the world safe for democracy. The United States mobilized its economy and military for war, sending millions of troops to Europe to fight alongside the Allies. The war ended in 1918 with the defeat of Germany and its allies, but not before millions of lives were lost and the world was forever changed. The aftermath of World War I saw the United States emerge as a global superpower, with its economy booming and its influence expanding. However, the war also left deep scars, both at home and abroad, setting the stage for the tumultuous events of the 20th century. The 1920s, often referred to as the Roaring Twenties, was a time of great change and prosperity in the United States. The decade was characterized by a booming economy, technological advancements, and significant social and cultural developments. The 1920s saw a period of economic prosperity, fueled in part by the end of World War I and the return of millions of soldiers to civilian life. The rise of consumer culture, facilitated by the widespread availability of new products like automobiles, radios, and household appliances, contributed to a surge in consumer spending and economic growth. The decade also witnessed significant social changes, particularly in the realm of women's rights. The passage of the 19th Amendment in 1920 granted women the right to vote, marking a major milestone in the fight for gender equality. Women began to assert their independence and challenge traditional gender roles, leading to greater freedom and opportunities for women in society. Culturally, the 1920s was a vibrant and dynamic decade, known for its jazz music, flapper fashion, and the Harlem Renaissance. African American culture flourished during this time, with artists, musicians, and writers producing works that would have a lasting impact on American culture. However, the prosperity of the 1920s came to a crashing halt with the onset of the Great Depression in 1929. The stock market crash of October 1929, known as Black Tuesday, signaled the beginning of a decade-long economic downturn that would have far-reaching consequences for the United States and the world. The Great Depression was characterized by widespread unemployment, poverty, and economic hardship. Millions of Americans lost their jobs, homes, and savings, leading to a dramatic decline in consumer spending and economic activity. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, who took office in 1933, introduced a series of New Deal programs aimed at providing relief, recovery, and reform. These programs included the establishment of public works projects, financial reforms, and social welfare programs designed to help the country recover from the effects of the Great Depression. The Great Depression had a profound impact on American society and culture, leading to a re-evaluation of the role of government in the economy and the implementation of new social policies aimed at preventing future economic crises. The experience of the Great Depression would shape American society for decades to come, leaving a lasting impact on the country's economic, political, and social landscape. World War II, which lasted from 1939 to 1945, was a global conflict that had a profound impact on the United States and the world. The war began with the invasion of Poland by Germany in September 1939 and quickly spread as other countries became involved. The United States initially remained neutral in the conflict, but as the war progressed and the Axis powers, led by Germany, Italy, and Japan, continued their aggression, the U.S. was drawn into the conflict. The attack on Pearl Harbor by Japan on December 7, 1941, prompted the United States to declare war on Japan and enter World War II. World War II was a total war, involving not just military combat but also the mobilization of entire societies and economies. The United States played a crucial role in the Allied victory, contributing to the war effort in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. The war had a profound impact on American society and the economy. The wartime economy led to a massive expansion of industry and the creation of millions of new jobs. Women entered the workforce in large numbers, taking on roles traditionally held by men who were serving in the military. The war also brought about significant social changes. The internment of Japanese Americans, the migration of African Americans from the South to northern cities to work in war industries, and the experiences of women in the workforce all highlighted issues of race, gender, and civil rights in American society. The end of World War II in 1945 marked the beginning of a new era for the United States and the world. The war had left much of Europe and Asia in ruins, and the United States emerged as a global superpower, with its economy largely intact and its military unmatched. The post-war era was characterized by a period of economic prosperity and technological advancement known as the post-war boom. The GI Bill provided education and housing benefits to millions of returning veterans, helping to fuel economic growth and the expansion of the middle class. The post-war era also saw the beginning of the Cold War, a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union. The United States emerged from World War II as a leader of the Western world, committed to containing the spread of communism and promoting democracy and free market capitalism. The experiences of World War II and its aftermath had a lasting impact on American society and culture, shaping the country's identity and its role in the world for decades to come. World War II was a brutal and devastating conflict, resulting in the deaths of millions of people and widespread destruction. The war saw the widespread use of new military technologies, including tanks, aircraft, and submarines, as well as the use of atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945. The war ended in 1945 with the unconditional surrender of Germany and Japan. The aftermath of the war saw the world divided into two major blocs: the Western democracies, led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union. This division would shape international politics for the next several decades, leading to the Cold War. The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the Western democracies, led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union, that lasted from the late 1940s to the early 1990s. The Cold War was characterized by a state of political, economic, and military rivalry between the two superpowers, but without direct military conflict. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union engaged in a number of proxy wars and competitions, including the space race and the arms race. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, in which the United States and the Soviet Union came to the brink of nuclear war over the placement of Soviet missiles in Cuba, was one of the most tense moments of the Cold War. The Cold War also had a significant impact on American society and culture. The fear of communism and the perceived threat of nuclear war led to a climate of political repression and conformity known as the Red Scare. This period saw the rise of McCarthyism, a campaign led by Senator Joseph McCarthy to root out alleged communists in government, the media, and other institutions. At the same time, the Cold War era was also a time of significant social change in the United States. The Civil Rights Movement, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., sought to end racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans. The movement achieved major victories, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which outlawed segregation and protected the voting rights of African Americans. The 1960s were also a time of cultural upheaval in the United States, with the rise of the counterculture movement, the anti-war movement, and the feminist movement. These movements challenged traditional norms and values, leading to significant changes in American society and culture. The late 20th and early 21st centuries have seen significant changes and developments in American society and politics. The end of the Cold War in the early 1990s marked a new era of global politics, with the United States emerging as the world's sole superpower. The 1990s saw the rise of the internet and the digital revolution, transforming the way people communicate, work, and live. Technological advancements in areas such as computers, smartphones, and the internet have revolutionized almost every aspect of daily life. The September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, carried out by the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda, had a profound impact on the United States and the world. The attacks led to the War on Terror, with the United States and its allies launching military operations in Afghanistan and Iraq to combat terrorism. The early 21st century has also seen significant changes in American politics. The election of Barack Obama as the first African-American president in 2008 marked a major milestone in American history. Obama's presidency was marked by efforts to reform healthcare, address climate change, and improve relations with other countries. In recent years, the United States has faced a number of challenges, including the rise of populism and nationalism, growing income inequality, and political polarization. The election of Donald Trump as president in 2016 was a reflection of these trends, with Trump's presidency characterized by controversy and divisiveness. The COVID-19 pandemic, which began in 2019 and continues to affect the world, has had a major impact on the United States. The pandemic has led to widespread illness, death, and economic disruption, highlighting the need for strong leadership and effective governance in times of crisis. Despite these challenges, the United States remains a vibrant and diverse society with a rich history of innovation, progress, and resilience. The country continues to face new challenges and opportunities in the 21st century, but its ability to adapt and change has been a defining feature of its history. As the United States moves forward into the 21st century, it faces a number of challenges and opportunities. One of the key challenges is addressing climate change and its impacts. The United States, along with other countries, must work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, transition to renewable energy sources, and mitigate the effects of climate change on the environment and society. Another important issue facing the United States is economic inequality. The gap between the rich and the poor has widened in recent years, leading to social unrest and political polarization. Addressing economic inequality will require policies that promote economic growth, job creation, and access to education and healthcare for all Americans. The United States also faces challenges in the realm of foreign policy. The rise of China as a global superpower, tensions with Russia, and the ongoing threat of terrorism require careful diplomacy and strategic engagement. The United States must work with its allies to address these challenges and promote peace and stability in the world. Despite these challenges, the United States has many strengths and opportunities. Its diverse population, innovative spirit, and strong democratic institutions provide a solid foundation for progress and growth. By working together and embracing change, the United States can continue to be a beacon of freedom, democracy, and prosperity for the world. The history of the United States is a story of resilience, innovation, and progress. From its humble beginnings as a colony to its emergence as a global superpower, the United States has overcome numerous challenges and obstacles to become a beacon of freedom and democracy. As we look to the future, it is important to remember the lessons of the past. The United States has faced and overcome many challenges throughout its history, and it is this spirit of perseverance and determination that will guide us forward. By embracing change, promoting unity, and upholding the values of freedom, democracy, and equality, the United States can continue to be a shining example of what is possible when people come together to build a better future for themselves and their children. As we reflect on the history of the United States, let us remember the words of President Abraham Lincoln, who said, "The struggle of today is not altogether for today, it is for a vast future also." By staying true to our ideals and working together, we can ensure that the American dream continues to shine bright for generations to come. Thank you for joining our podcast, Echoes of the Past. We hope you have enjoyed this exploration of America's history, and that it has sparked your curiosity and ignited your passion for learning. Join us next time on Tidbit Takeaways as we uncover more fascinating stories from the pages of history. Until then, remember to stay curious, keep learning, and always cherish the tidbits of history that make our world so endlessly fascinating.